Demolition Man, starring Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes, hit theaters in 1993. Like a lot of big movies at the time, the decision was made to market a toy line to kids. Mattel happened to be the company to take it on, and that same year released their line of Demolition Man action figures. A fairly common practice, most of the action figures were nothing more than various renditions of the main character, John Spartan. So basically, there's multiple variants of Sylvester Stallone filling up the majority of this line. And, hey, does something look a little familiar about this one? I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. Anyway, moving on. Of the 8 figures released, 4 of them were John Spartan figures. The rest of the bunch were made up of 2 versions of Simon Phoenix, an Edgar Friendly, and a Cryoclaw tech. Aside from the decent rendition of Sylvester Stallone in the head sculpts, most of the figures really didn't resemble their on-screen counterparts. In fact, most of the figures in this line almost look like their bodies don't quite fit right. Okay, this is bothering me a little bit. Hang on just a second, I need a closer look.
Wait, what? Son of a biscuit!
I knew there was something about this figure. Look! This John Spartan is nothing more than a New Adventures He-Man with a different head. Check it out! The details on the body are all exactly the same. The only real difference is the small holster on his belt that is meant to hold his morality box. Other than that, he's completely identical. The body itself just has a different paint job. The armor is even exactly the same, just molded in a slightly different color plastic. Look, there's even a holster on the back made for He-Man's sword. And his belt even has the same H design on it. Amazing! Now honestly, this was a fairly common practice. It was a cheap way to get a line of action figures out there without paying dollars to retool new molds. At this point, the New Adventures of He-Man line was coming to a close, so it was perfect timing to get some more use out of the molds that they already had tooled. This John Spartan isn't the only figure in the line that shares a body with the He-Man line. Just take a look. The Cryoclaw tech uses Flipshot's body. The kick-fighting John Spartan uses Nocturna's body. Friendly is nothing more than a new head on Kaio's body. And Blast Attack Phoenix is just a reuse of Visar's body. And the reuse of parts didn't stop with the figures. Take a look at this. The Demolition Man toy line has a vehicle called the Bola Jet, which is exactly the same as the He-Man Bola Jet, just with a different deco. They didn't even bother changing the name on this one. There were only 3 whole figures released in the line that had completely original sculpts. These 2 John Spartans here are 2 of those 3. The original sculpted bodies are completely lacking of articulation in the legs, so that's one way you can tell that they're not reused from the New Adventures toy line. The Demolition Man toy line wasn't a huge success, just like most movie licenses. If you're interested in picking them up, they aren't terribly hard to find, but since they mostly share parts with the New Adventures of He-Man action figures, these actually hit that particular corner of the toy collecting community, making these not as cheap as you would think they should be. Sometimes you can find them for pretty good prices, but don't be surprised if you see some of these figures going for anywhere between $10 and $20 a piece. So who would have thought? You could buy an action figure of Sylvester Stallone dressed as He-Man.